Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor, and today we are going to be taking a look at a case where a family of 5 in New Jersey bought what they thought was their dream home. But before they could move in, they started receiving mysterious and disturbing letters from an unknown entity that claimed to be observing their new home. Today, we are taking a look at the bizarre and unsettling mystery of the Watcher House. Let's dive in. Before we get into this episode, I want to talk about something. Our Patreon has gotten an overhaul. We've heard the feedback, so we're changing some things up. At the start of March, we added 2 new tiers. Tier 1 is only $1 and will give you access to early and ad-free episodes. Tier 2, at $5, will get you access to special episodes that won't make the main page, and exclusive bi-weekly Discord streams in addition to the perks of Tier 1. And Tier 3 gives you everything from the first 2 tiers, plus exclusive future shows and a physical copy of TJ's book, Dear Editor, if you'd like it once it releases. We hope you guys like this change, and we are looking forward to any and all feedback. We'll get into everything about the Watcher House right after this. Our story starts in early June of 2014, when the Broaddus family, consisting of Maria, Derek, and their 3 children, purchased a spacious 6-bedroom home in the quiet town of Westfield, New Jersey. This home, built in 1905, was situated at 657 Boulevard. This street had many other beautiful homes and was considered one of the best places to live in Westfield. Maria and Derek called this their dream home. But before fully moving in, they planned on doing some renovations to it to make it even more perfect. And their 3 children would often come with them and play in the backyard. 3 days after the sale closed, on June 5th, Derek was painting a part of the house at around 10 p.m. and went out to check the mail. In the mailbox, there was an envelope with thick lettering and bad handwriting that read, "The new owner." Inside the envelope was a terrifying letter that read,
"Dear newest neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. And as it approaches its 110th birthday, I've been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s. My father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. You need to fill the house with the young blood I requested. Better for me. Is your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me.
In the same letter, the writer had accurately identified the type of car the Broadduses drove, and they also expressed anger towards the changes that they had been making to the house. It was also clear that the Watcher knew that the family included 3 children. They went on to say,
"There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard and all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one."
and at the bottom of this letter, signed in a cursive font, is where the namesake of the mysterious entity was found. Derek, who was obviously scared and concerned for the safety of his family, called the police. The police asked Derek many questions, and a big one being if he had any enemies. Derek would then return to their current home and inform Maria of the situation. They both then contacted the previous owners of the house, John and Andrea Woods, to see if they had received anything from the Watcher before. The Woods claimed that they never received any letters of any sort, threatening or not, until the day they moved out on May 26th, 2014. According to the Woods, they only ever got this one letter. And while they thought it was odd, they ignored it because they had lived there for 23 years without incident, so they didn't think too much about it. The Woods' letter contained all the same information about somebody watching the house for generations as the Broaddus' letter did. Both families reported these letters to the police, who told them not to share this incident with any of their neighbors, just in case one of them may be the Watcher. Despite this incident, the Broadduses continued working on the house, and 2 weeks later, on June 18th, while still not being fully moved in, they received another letter.
657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It's been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all the secrets and holes yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I'd be very afraid if I were them. It's far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream.
In this letter, the Watcher included the birth order and nicknames of all the children, and said they recalled hearing the couple call their names very loudly at times. They go on to say how they saw their daughter painting on an easel on the front porch, and asked in the letter,
"Is she the artist of the family?"
The Watcher then went on to ask who lives in which rooms, going further as to say,
"All the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house."
At this point, the family put moving into the house on hold and chose to stay with Maria's parents, who happened to live very close to their new house. They continued to upkeep on the house, pay the mortgage, and check the mail, even though they were not living there. They also stopped bringing their children over to the house while doing these tasks, to prevent anything more from happening. Precisely 1 month after the last letter, on July 18th, another letter came in. In this letter, the Watcher said they noticed the family's delay and wrote,
"Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you."
Now, let's look at all the info we have so far. The letters. Multiple of them sent to 2 different families that resided at 657 Boulevard The first of which were the same for both families. The handwriting on these letters. The envelopes and the letters themselves both had real handwriting on them, so it's safe to assume it was written by the Watcher themselves. And then the Watcher's story. The Watcher seems to be very observant and aware of all that is going on in or near the house, and they seem to have been doing it for centuries, if their story is to be trusted, that is. All of these things can serve to build some very strong leads. And with a situation like this, that is so kind of out in the open, there surely would be witnesses, right? Like, if the Watcher is actually there, watching the family and the house, you would assume somebody passing by or a neighbor would notice, right? And even if a neighbor did see, how would you go about asking them for help at a time like this, when you can't be sure of anyone around you? At the start of the investigation, with no paper trail or fingerprints on the letter, there wasn't much for the police to go off of. The letters themselves were postmarked in Kearney, New Jersey, a town about 16 miles from Westfield, and also the location of a UPS distribution center. But these letters didn't possess a return address. The first letter was postmarked on June 4th, 2014. Now, this is odd for a couple of reasons. On June 4th, the sale itself was not yet public, and the contractors had only begun to work on the house the day prior. For these reasons, it's safe to say that we can infer that someone certainly was watching, and very actively at that. Police interviewed neighbors, former residents, former housekeepers, and etc., but never made any arrests. Even the other prospective buyers for the house, who were outbid by the Broadduses, were considered. But these leads fell through because of those potential buyers. One fully backed out, and the others found a different house that they preferred more. When questioned, the Broadduses claimed that they didn't have any issues with the new neighborhood or any of their neighbors, though they did say they grew extremely paranoid and even experienced PTSD from the Watcher's letters. With the police not being able to find anything, the Broaddus family made a few efforts of their own to try and track down the Watcher or catch them in the act. They hired their own private investigator and even a handwriting specialist to help take a look at the letters and maybe find some leads. And then they placed cameras in the house and used them to watch and see if anybody got close. This was all for nothing, and only 6 months after purchasing the home on Boulevard, they decided to try and sell it. And to nobody's surprise, they could not find a buyer. The Broadduses went on to sue the Woods, believing that they should have been informed of the Watcher's letters. They had claimed that the Woods intentionally left this information out so the house would be purchased. The suit was dropped, but this ultimately resulted in public attention for the Watcher mystery. This suit also sparked a lot of internet interest in the Watcher. With no one wanting to buy the house, the Broadduses decided they wanted to tear down the home and replace it with 2 smaller homes. The proposed houses would have been 3 feet too small for the required size of the neighborhood, so they needed the neighborhood planning board to appeal the rule. But, much to their dismay, the planning board unanimously rejected their proposal in January of 2017. Many of the neighbors were very vocal about their feelings on the proposal and took to the Westfield Facebook groups and went to the hearings. And in the end, the majority claimed that this rule would ruin the aesthetic of the neighborhood, and they did not approve. Fellow residents grew frustrated with the negative attention that the Watcher story has brought upon the once idyllic boulevard. And at the time, according to Neighborhood Scout, Westfield was the 30th safest town in the US to live in. So safe that many residents didn't even bother locking their doors. And while that is very safe, the area is no stranger to dangerous individuals, as it was the home of notorious murderer John List, who meticulously killed his wife, mother, and 3 children at their home in 1971. Later in the year, the Broadduses managed to finally find someone that was willing to rent the house from them. They made sure that the lease included a clause that would allow the renters to leave if the Watcher sent another letter. It was only 2 weeks into them renting the house that they received the final letter from the Watcher.
Violent winds and bitter cold. To the vile and spiteful Derek, his wench of a wife Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is. Turn around, it is. I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are a wonderful invention. My soldiers of the boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. Maybe a car accident. Maybe a fire. Maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, or makes you feel sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. You were despised by the house, and the Watcher won.
Finally, in August of 2019, the Broadduses finally sold the house at 657 Boulevard for $1.2 million, which was $400,000 less than they bought it for. We'll get into the theories and suspects for this case right after this. So, there are very few suspects in this case, but of the few we have, the first are the next door neighbors of the Broadduses, the Langfords. In these kinds of cases, your first thought is, it's usually the next door neighbor, right? And that's where the Langfords come into play. The Langfords were the next door neighbors of the Broadduses, and were marked as possible suspects pretty early on. The Langfords, consisting of a widowed mother and her adult children, have lived in the same house since the 1960s. They had an adult son named Michael, and when their dad died in 2002, he was the man of the house. So, the timeline of these events lines up eerily close to that of the generations of other Watchers stated in the letter. The Langfords themselves were all seen as kind of weird or strange by some of the neighborhood, but the one that got the most looks was Michael. He sometimes would peek into the windows of neighbors' houses, and according to his brother, Sandy Langford, Michael had been diagnosed with schizophrenia as a young man. Even with all these factors, the neighborhood didn't believe he would write the letters. Michael was adamant to the police that he didn't know anything about the letters and had no involvement. The Langfords' home was close enough to the Broadduses to see and hear all that was written in the Watcher's letters, such as the daughter painting on the front porch and hearing Derek and Maria yelling their names from time to time. Michael was quickly dismissed as a suspect when DNA analysis of the saliva used to seal the envelope showed that whoever wrote the letters was a woman. This shifted the suspicions to Michael's sister, Abby. But after a test of her DNA, police determined it to not be a match to the DNA found on the envelope. With no physical evidence, or even a motive, the Langfords were dismissed as suspects. The next possible suspect for this mystery is the Broadduses themselves. Some believe that the Broaddus family themselves fabricated the Watcher letters for some unknown reason. Many of the neighbors wondered how the family could have moved from their $300,000 home to one that costs $1.6 million. It's possible that after purchasing the house, they may have realized that they couldn't actually afford it, and creating an anonymous stalker that the previous didn't inform them about would allow them to back out of the sale if they wanted to. The key pieces that strengthen this idea is that the previous owners never received a letter until a few days before they moved out, and the sale wasn't even public yet. And then the Broadduses pursued a lawsuit in which they could possibly make back some of the money spent on the house, or use that money to pay off the house. There are multiple problems with this theory, though. The first being that the Broadduses were making very expensive renovations to the house, and that would seem very counterproductive if they couldn't afford the house in the first place. Then, Maria herself had been diagnosed with PTSD from the experience with the Watcher and their letters. Following the decision by the Neighborhood Association preventing 657 Boulevard from being demolished, people who had rejected the proposal online, especially those who believed the Watcher was a hoax, started receiving typed letters. It is uncertain how many of these letters were sent out, but in these letters, the writer expressed anger at their decisions, similar to that of the letters of the Watcher. All of these were signed Friends of the Broaddus family. In an interview with The Cut, Derek admitted to sending these letters and also claimed that he never told Maria about them. And given the previous DNA test results that were found by the cops, Maria was tested, but her DNA also did not match with the DNA found on the letters. Some others theorize that they did this to get some kind of movie deal. Now, Netflix did purchase the rights to the story in 2018, but at the time of the events, there was no guarantee this would actually happen. Also, in 2016, prior to Netflix purchasing the rights, Lifetime released a feature-length film based on the story. though this led to them getting a cease and desist from the Broaddus family. And to this day, Derek still actively refutes the idea of it all being a hoax. We will get right back into the theories right after this. Now, another suspect is the neighborhood itself. Maybe the neighborhood didn't feel the Broadduses fit into their community, and someone in it sent the letters to scare them into leaving. One of the main reasons for this, they may not have liked the changes they were making to a historic house. And it's pretty apparent that they held judgment over the family already for how they came to own that home after owning a home of lesser value. Some of the Watchers' letters showed that they had a disliking for all the new money the Broadduses brought to the neighborhood.
The house is crying from all the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It's cried for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room, imagining life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again.
And to end this theory, it's interesting to note that during the board hearing regarding the rule on property size allowance, it turned out that other properties on Boulevard were also too small. So it's weird to see that the Broadduses were denied for this reason. And of course, we can't end this episode without talking about the most obvious theory here. What if there actually was someone living, or at least spending a substantial amount of time, inside the walls of 657 Boulevard? There are a few leads that really build up this theory, like one of the lines from the first letter.
Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard?
And in the second letter,
the workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will.
the Watcher is very specific in pointing out the fact that there might be something in the walls. For what reason? We don't know. What could have possibly been inside the walls of 657 Boulevard? If anything at all. And could it have been the Watcher themselves? And when it comes to the letters, what could the Watcher have wanted with the family's children? And why did the Watcher never act on the letters? There are so many unanswered questions in this mystery, and we may never get the answers to them. So, what do you think? Is the Watcher really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram at OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you will get exclusive perks like bonus episodes, early access, and even surprises. See you next week.